Hello, everyone. I decided to take a look at how this journey of this podcast has gone, and I realized that my intro and first episode came out August 31st of 2023. So, counting the intro, this makes this episode 60. So, what I wanted to talk about today is a question I think is vital to every photographer, and that is, what kind of photographer do you want to be? Now, you've probably seen those goofy games on social media. Touch this and it'll tell you what your future is going to be or what you should do and all that junk. Some pablum that comes out from their little random sayings generator to give you a response to the game. But let's look at it from a point of reality, shall we? What is it that you wish to provide to a client? Okay. Is it something that they put on their wall that they look at and admire all the time? Is it a way of making money for taking pictures of things around you? Is it a way of capturing wildlife, especially endangered wildlife, so that we've got a record of them prosperity? Is it just to bring joy to a person? Now, all of those are not exclusive. So we haven't gotten you into a position yet, but think about what it is that you wish to provide to a client. Do you like digitals? Do you like framed art? That is, your pictures behind glass with a frame around it. Do you like metal prints? Do you like glass prints? Do you like canvas prints? So you think about what it is that you want to provide from an emotional standpoint. What do you want your client to feel when they see it? Do you want them to wish they were living wherever that portrait of a landscape that you took is? Do you want them to look at an animal and want to protect it based on the beautiful image that you made? Do you want them to look upon your family and feel all that love every single day, every time they look at that photo, regardless of the media that it's in? Do you want them to look at something and just feel relaxed? Do you want them to have something cool that they can use as a background on a Zoom call or a Teams call or on their phone? What is it that you wish to provide? That will lead you, in some instances, toward the media that you're going to use. For example, if you want to make backgrounds for phones, then it's just digital. If you wanted to put together a meditation video or something to be used in a meditation video, that might all be digital as well, with having somebody do a voiceover with a meditation or calming words or something like that. So figuring out the emotional piece is important. That could lead you, doesn't necessarily lead you, to the medium that you're going to use. For example, let's take an example of a boudoir photograph. A lot of people will want to keep those private. Not everybody will, but a lot of people will, and that's going to lead you to either a digital portfolio or an album, a book that they put away on their shelf or someplace more private that has those images in it. Some are going to want a giant wall image of themselves in one of those boudoir poses. That's going to be client specific, right? As is some of the other stuff, depending on what you want to do. But let's take a look at some of the options that are available. Let's start with the money-making one, stock photography. Now, I say money making because your goal there is just to make money, right? Regardless of why you took that photograph, you're selling that photograph to be used for whatever purpose the buyer chooses to use it for. And that probably means that you've got it posted to some website other than your own, with a bunch of other photographs that you're competing with to get people's attention to use that photograph. From a legal standpoint, you have to understand that for some of that photograph, if there are people in it, you're going to need to have a waiver, permission to use them in whatever it gets used for, because you don't know where these stock photographs are going to be used. They could be on somebody's background that could go viral. They could be on a billboard. They could be in an ad somewhere. You have no control over where it's going to be used, so you have to make sure that you're legally protected, that everybody in that photograph has agreed in writing to be used. One of the things you'll notice about my photography is I've done a lot of stuff at the fort. I do not post photographs with people in them that aren't fort personnel. They've pretty much signed up by the nature of their work to be publicly photographed. Now, if they come to me and say, I'd like to have that picture taken down, I am more than willing to do that. But they've publicly agreed to that contract. The people who come for reenactments have not necessarily, nor have the guests. Now, there's a caveat to that in that the fort can use them because they've put that agreement, if you will, posted it at the site. They put it with the tickets. If you're at the fort and you have your picture taken, you're fair game for the fort to use, not for everybody else. So I want to make that clear. You have to be clear about the legal requirements of your area and federally to make sure that you're in compliance. For that, talk to a good lawyer. Beyond stock photography, if you want to do something that is relaxing or non-personal, so you don't have to worry about any of the legal aspects of it in terms of the subject of the photograph, because bear in mind, if you could take a picture of somebody's house, you may need to have permission to show that. Depends on the state. So again, having a lawyer that you can contact is important here. But if you're just taking pictures of fall foliage, if you're just taking pictures of animals or birds, just to capture them as the bird flies through the air or a little bunny's hopping along the ground, or just to grab that beautiful picture of fall foliage with that river running through it, all of that is not going to have that legal requirement to it. You don't need permission from the subject to be used. There isn't a privacy concern here per se, because you don't have a house or somebody's personal property that's showing up. So you're clear on that. Again, this is kind of a, or could be a stock photograph possibility, right? You could be putting these up on stock sites, but you might also want to sell it to magazines that deal with landscapes or animals. Audubon Society may want to buy your picture to be used as a representation of that particular animal, for example. So that's another class of photographer. That one has, as do stock photographers, more freedom in when you take your photographs. That's not to say you're not going to pay attention to, is it golden hour, et cetera, but you aren't scheduling an appointment for that. If you're taking a street photograph, you're just going to go take a street photograph. Make sure you got your contracts with you so everybody can sign them. If you are just taking pictures of buildings, then make sure that you've got can get ownership permission for using that photograph. But taking pictures of manhole covers or walls to get textures and things like that, you're not going to have that same requirement. Same with landscapes and animals and birds and plants. You won't have the same requirement from a legal standpoint, but you could use them as stock photographs, or you could make a beautiful montage of flowers up that somebody could use for a meditation video, or could put on their background for a video call, those kinds of things. They might want to use your photo on the phone as a background. So that's a different class, because a lot of landscape photographers sell their artwork printed. So unlike stock photographers who are selling a usable image, so they're not selling something that could necessarily just be digital, they could be printed. When you're doing landscape, somebody wants to put that landscape up on the wall, or they might want to put the flower on the wall, or it might be someplace like the Audubon Society that wants to print that in their magazine, both digital and print. So that's a different type of photography. But again, as I said, they're kind of open as to when you go shoot. Now we're going to get into things that are a little bit more restrictive when it comes to when the photo is going to be taken. Lesser restrictions are going to be around events, because the event itself is happening over a fixed period of time, but you're going to be taking pictures that are rolling through that time frame. They're not, the event's going to be at 1 o'clock and I have to be there at 10 minutes to 1 o'clock to get set up, get my lighting, etc. These are things that are going to have less equipment, usually, because you're going to be rolling and shooting as you go. And they're going to be more open as far as what you're doing during the day, but they're still scoped to a day, right? So this has a little more restriction to it, has the same legal restrictions to it as I just mentioned. You're taking a picture of an event. Maybe you want to try to sell that photograph to the event planners or to the newspaper. You're going to have the permissions of the people that you've gotten pictures of in order to use those images. If you don't, then they have a legal right to come after you and ask for it to be taken down, and ask for compensation should you have made money on their image. Again, not a lawyer. Talk to a lawyer. This is my understanding of the law. The image of a person belongs to the person. So that said, we now get into the more restrictive realms of photography. Portrait photography is restrictive in several ways. Again, legally, you have to have permission to use the picture, but you're going to be setting a particular time and place for that photograph, right? You're going to have a time open and a place on events, but when you come to a portrait photograph, you're going to want to be there on time, you're going to be at that place, and you're going to want to be set up before the client shows up and have your equipment ready to go if you bring equipment. And by equipment, I mean lights and umbrellas or soft boxes, the normal equipment that you would think of as a photographer. If you're shooting outside, that still means you may have equipment. You might need to have an umbrella, for example, to soften the sunlight that's hitting your client. All right, that's one way to do it. Those big umbrellas are a great way to soften the light coming in, as are silver or gold reflectors to get rid of any shadows that might be showing up around your subject and add more light to the scene. But it's very restrictive on time, right? You're going to be there from X to Y. You're going to take the photographs. If you are going to provide a hair and makeup artist there as well, then they have to be there in advance. They have to get everything taken care of. And again, while it's a wider overall time frame, because they have to do their work too, it's still a tight time frame. You want to get your client in and out of there as quickly as possible, both for your time, right? But for theirs as well. You want to be respectful of your client's time. Now, portrait photography goes into a wide range of other types within that. For example, taking photographs of high school seniors. A little bit less restrictive. If you want to use them on your site, you should have permission, of course, but it's a little less restrictive in that it is a known quantity. The parent has asked you to take the picture. A regular portrait, the person has asked you to take the picture. So in both cases, if you're going to use it on your site, make sure you have permission to use it on your site. But you've got those types of high school portraits, senior portraits, for example, event portraits, club portraits when it comes to schools, if that's what you like to do. Graduation photographs, of course. Other portraits that you could take are headshots for people to use professionally, either in their, for example, LinkedIn profile, or they could be something that they use as they go around and shop themselves because they're actors or actresses. Those headshots are usually a little different and a little bit more varied when it comes to the actor. For example, there may be different emotions that they want to capture on those headshots that they would use for different roles that they want to play. If they're doing a horror film, they might want to have a certain expression on their face if they're pitching a horror film versus if they just want to be a general guy or girl next door type of thing. Again, still limited in scope as to the timing, but different types of portraits that you're going to do. And of course, at the end scale of that, the most restrictive of all is going to be boudoir photography. And I'm going to bundle in here nude photography with that. Because some boudoir photography will have some nudes in it. But if you're doing that or nude photography, you have to be very clear about where it's going to be used. You have to be very clear about how it's going to be used. And you have to make sure that it's kept private. Privacy is the utmost thing when you're doing boudoir photography. You don't want to have any of those pictures get leaked. What happens to them after you've given them to the client's copy, that is on the client. The copy you have is always going to be something that you have to protect. A lot of photographers keep their photographs around only for a limited amount of time and delete them, and I can understand why when you're doing something like boudoir photography, you never have to worry about it being leaked if that whole folder just doesn't exist anymore, right? But boudoir and nude photography, your websites are going to have to be set up differently. There's going to be more expense for that. You're going to probably need to make sure. Again, this is tough when you're talking about a website because of international jurisdictions. But as you know, a lot of states in the United States are starting to crack down on what they consider to be pornography, which they don't define. But you may need to know where the person's coming from and have something in place to verify that they're 18 or older before they look at your site. It can get crazy in this realm, depending on the type of photographs that you take. So that's why I'm saying this is the most restrictive of it. This is going to have the most legal ramifications of something going wrong in it. Of course, with portraits, you also have baby photographs, right? Newborns. What do I want to take a picture of on a newborn? All right. Do I want to get the little fingers and the little toes? Do I want them in with the parents? Things like that. That is that realm of portrait photography. And of course, you always have the portrait photography of people's pets, right? They've got their dog, they've got their cat, they want a photograph of that. These are all subsets of photography, and it should match what you're passionate about and at the same time what you're good at. If you're not good with cats and dogs, then I would say pet photography is probably not for you, unless you're taking pictures of goldfish or lizards or spiders or something that is less of you needing to interact with the subject. If you are passionate about babies, then maybe you want to get into newborn photography. If you're passionate about couples and love, you might want to do the wedding photography or boudoir photography for wedding couples, or just as a gift for one person in the wedding party, for example, the bride, to give to the groom after the wedding. So you need to know what you're passionate about. So let's take a look at what we've gone over so far. What emotion do you want your client to feel when they look at your art? What medium do you feel is best representative of your art? What types of subjects are you the most passionate and most comfortable with? Okay. You could reverse that and say, okay, well, I know what subjects I want to take pictures of. I know how I want them to feel, because you want a high school senior, for example, to feel seen and to feel happy and to be able to capture that moment of their life, for example. And you want to put it out in a particular format. Let's take, for example, to give you the top to bottom, you love working with babies and newborns. You love capturing that love that the parents show to the newborn. You want them to feel that love every time they look at your photographs. And you want to have not only a beautiful piece of wall art for them to look at with their newborn, maybe a collage of the little fingers and toes pictures with the baby and with the parents, and maybe it's a photograph or a collage of photographs that capture all of that they put on their wall, bearing in mind that if you want them to come back as you take pictures as the child grows up, if that is what you want, you want to have something that they can create a collection from. But you might also want to put together an album. It doesn't have to be a big album, but something that they can put away and protect, right? If you've got your picture on the wall, it's got a life expectancy to it. If you take that photograph and you put it aside in an album, that album can be sealed away, and it can be something that the parents look at every day, or it could be something that they look at when the kid's gone away, gone off to college, right? When they want to remember what their child was like when it was a baby, they can go back and open that book up. I took a picture of a young woman. She had given birth recently, and I wanted to capture her on her job the same year the baby was born. I took that photograph, which I gave to her, put it in archive paper, which is meant to protect the photograph. It has no acids in it. Put that in an archive envelope. Put that entire thing in another archive envelope. It's a clear envelope within another envelope. So it's triply sealed and it's wrapped in paper inside to boot. So that at some point, her newborn daughter could see what her mother looked like the day she was born, just about within a couple of weeks. At the job she was doing at the time, because who knows what job she'll have in 18 years from now. And be able to have moments of her mother's life that she can look at. Again, who knows how long any of us are going to be here. I'm hoping that the mother and child both have extremely long lives. And when they look at these things, it's just a snapshot of time that there's plenty more time to have after that. But your passion, what it is that you want to be remembered for, what you want people to remember when they look at your art, that is the important part of who you are and what it is that you're going to take. From there, it should be an easier step to figure out, okay, I'm passionate about newborns, so I'll take pictures of newborns. I'm passionate about families, so I want to take that picture of that newborn and I want to take pictures all the way up until that child leaves the home. Maybe every 5 years, maybe every 2 years, maybe every year, I want to be able to capture a photograph of that child and that family. So start with your passion. Figure out what it is that you are passionate about in photography. What subjects you want to take is going to flow from that. From that may flow what medium you're going to use. Is it albums? Is it video? Is it going to be digital? Is it going to be prints? And from there, what kind of emotion do you want your photographs to evoke from the viewer? Be it the person who's in the photograph or their loved ones. What is it that you want to be remembered for when people look at that image? Because bear in mind, that is in part your legacy. The way people feel when they look at one of your photographs. This has been episode 60 of this Talking Photography podcast, and I will talk to you guys all next week.